Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Debate Podcast, episode number 4. Yes, we're moving up in the world a little bit. We are now on our 4th episode. As I have trouble speaking, I'm going to apologize right off the bat. I am, of course, Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? I'm a little bit under the weather, so hopefully our prestigious guests are going to be able to pick up the slack where I may be coughing in the background. I'm joined by 2 of our 3 normal guests, and we have one new guest for today. We have Joseph Hindy and Jonathan Feist. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Internet.
Doing well, thank you.
Well, they are both super healthy at the moment, so like I said, they're probably going to talk more than me in this particular podcast, but that's perfectly fine because I want to give a quick shout out to Andrew Grush. Our lovely Grushy is out for this week. Let's just say he ran into a little bit of trouble, and I really wish he could have been on this podcast along with the 4 of us, because it would have been great to hear Andrew Grush on meds while he was on the podcast. He's got a little bit of a dental thing going on. So best of luck to you, Grushy. Recover very soon and enjoy the meds. But our 4th today is our fellow YouTuber, Lanh Nguyen. And I want to go ahead and hand it over to Lanh real quick. For our viewers on YouTube, you may be watching our podcast video on YouTube for the benefit of those of you who aren't on podcast streams just yet. But remember that the Android Authority Friday Debate podcast can be found on all of the different podcast networks: iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher. We're very close to SoundCloud, like I keep saying. I promise that's coming very soon, but you can find it all there. But nonetheless, let's hand it over to Lanh. Lanh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our podcast listeners and tell us what you do here at Android Authority.
Hey, what's up, guys? Some of you guys might already know me because I'm part of the YouTube team, and I review phones and tablets and wearables, all that good stuff. So if you guys follow us on the channel, then you've probably seen a lot of my work, and you'll probably see some articles that I write for like cases and accessories on the site as well too. So, I'm here on the Friday Debate. This is my 2nd time, but it's good to be here. So.
Yeah, for anyone that may not have followed us since the beginning here at the Friday Debate Podcast, Lanh was on our pilot episode that we recorded live at CES 2015. Speaking of which, I do want to say that NWC is only a couple of weeks away, and we have the distinct pleasure, obviously, of being there. I will not be there alone as the sole YouTuber this time around. Lanh will be coming as well, so you can expect a live episode from us. We're probably going to have Darcy Lacouve on that particular episode as well, and maybe a couple of special guests. So it might be an episode that gets a little nuts because we have a lot of people all in one room talking at one microphone, most likely. So nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody once again to the 4th episode of the Friday Debate Podcast. And this week we're talking about wearables, which is why I think it's great that we have Lanh on the episode, because this is more of a device-centric podcast this time around. I'm going to go ahead and read off our topic for this week, of course, created by Grushy, the architect of the Friday Debate, every single week on AndroidAuthority.com. For years now, companies have been claiming that wearables will be the next big thing, not to quote Samsung. It's 2015, and still wearable devices are niche at best, with Apple, HTC, and likely many other players entering into the game this year. What will it take for smartwatches to go mainstream? What features would make you buy one? Or do you think that they will always remain niche? Now, to begin our discussion here on wearables, I am going to hand it over to Lanh once again, since you are our guest for this week. And I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on wearable technology?
Like right now, I think it's kind of, I don't know, like I don't think it's really taken off the way that I think a lot of these OEMs have sort of wanted it to take off. And I feel like it's still like very, like the only people that really want to wear them are like the like people like us, like the techie guys. And I don't know, I think it's just, it's not having that appeal that they're sort of anticipating. And I think some of it has to do with maybe just the functionality. And I don't know, because like for me, like I don't feel that compelled to always wear like my Moto 360 all the time, because I don't feel like it really changes my life drastically. And I think for people to want to buy into these things, there has to be like a big incentive for them to use it that will actually change the way they use their phones or really augment the way they use their phones. And I don't really think it's doing that right now. And for me, like, I would like to, it's probably never going to happen, but I'd like to be able to text from my phone or text from my smartwatch, actually be able to like physically input like messages and not always speak it out loud. But that's probably never going to happen. But I think if that did happen, I think that would actually sort of help. That would actually make more people want to adopt one, because right now everything's just kind of like, I don't know. It's like, it's nice to have, but you don't necessarily have to have it. It's cool to be able to check the weather on my wrist and stuff like that, but it's not that much more difficult for me to pull my phone out of my pocket and just unlock and look at a widget or something. So I don't know. It's just, I think that's why it hasn't really taken off yet. It's not as compelling as they're hoping it to be.
Okay. How about you guys, Joe and John? Let's start off with Joe.
Okay, I think Lanh touched on it. The biggest reason when he said that, there's not really a use for it. Like when you look at other technology that like literally everybody uses, you look at computers and you look at smartphones, they fill a very huge void that was unfilled before. Like before smartphones, the best we could do was play Snake on a Nokia phone and like talk and text with the T9 keyboard, and those things were trash, and everybody knows it.
Whoa. T9 was amazing back in the day, I gotta say. Like,
I hated T9.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't. I'm an idiot, so like I could never figure out exactly how it worked. And it was like, by the time I got a phone that was able to use it, it was like right around the corner was the QWERTY keyboards. So there was like a good like 3 or 4 month window there where I was trying to use T9. And I was like, screw this, I'm going QWERTY, and never went back.
I love T9, man, because like, that was like the only time where I was able to actually text and not look at my phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can't do that nowadays. It's hard to like text and not be able to look, and not look at your phone. But T9, I was able to do that on the fly.
Well, and also one of the greatest things about T9 was when you could text faster using T9.
Well, in T9's defense, I do use the
keyboards.
T9 app dialer because our other YouTuber Kevin Nether got me to review it for an app once. So I do use T9 today, but I could not use it back then, and I hated it as a keyboard thing. But anyways, back to what I was saying. I didn't expect someone having to jump on me for the T9 thing. Damn. But yeah, no, I mean, like, before there were smartphones, there was a huge need for, even if people didn't really know it, there was a huge need for smartphones, and that's filled such a huge gap. People use smartphones every day for all kinds of stuff, the social media and the phone calls and the texts and the games and a whole bunch of stuff that cell phones couldn't do before, but it's still useful enough to carry around with you all the time. And, the same thing with computers and computers and laptops didn't exist. We would not be here. We would not be doing what we do today. So it's huge impact for a lot of people, and smartwatches just don't have that. There isn't that thing that void that they fill that everybody needs, even if they don't realize they need it just yet. So I think that's why that they haven't caught on too much. It's there's no reason to own one other than to say that you have one and as like an accessory, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'm expecting a very passionate discussion among all of us on this particular topic, because we've all touched wearables or worn wearables, let's put it that way, and we all have our own opinions on it. I want us to get feisty right now to talk about some wearables.
Oh, I'm going to disappoint you and completely agree with Joe. No. Almost. Now, it's hard to outdo what Joe just said. Let's be honest, this is niche. It really is. Now, I'll back up here. I struggle with using the word wearable when all we're talking about is smartwatches. When I think wearable, I'm thinking beyond the smartwatch. Now, here's my biggest reason. I have a really nice watch already, for starters, but I can't wear it day to day. When I'm sitting down at the computer, that watch, it rubs on the desk, it rubs on the laptop. I cannot use it and work at the same time. Therefore, a smartwatch, same problem. It just doesn't fit my needs. So what is a wearable to me? It's something else. Is it Google Glass? Well, I'm already wearing glasses, and I avoid them whenever I can. So I'd have to get 2 pairs of Google Glass, or the transitional ones, so that I can wear my glasses or just my contacts. And so things are getting difficult here. For me, I think actually one of the better wearables out there is the Motorola Moto Hint. It's just that earbud, it talks to you, but it doesn't do anything. So for me, wearables, they're just like Joe is saying, they're very much a niche product. They serve so little that they really can't go mainstream. We've already got the computers, we've already got the cell phones, we're accomplishing everything we need. These guys are just for convenience. Now that said, I very much think of the business place or students in school. You're not allowed to bring your cell phone out of your pocket. Having those notifications pop up on your wrist, that's really cool. I definitely buy into that.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. I just imagine what it would have been like back when I was in college if I had, let's say, the Pebble I have on my wrist right now. Like what it would be like if I was in class. You know, maybe I might have been the only person wearing it, and that would have made it even cooler or nerdy, I guess. But
I believe the word you're looking for is nerdy there, Josh.
yeah, nerdy. Yeah, exactly. But it would make me different in class, you know, that my phone goes off and I'm just like, oh, I don't even have to touch it. And people are like, ooh, what's that? Because when smartwatches were first sort of becoming a thing, the Pebble was obviously one of the first ones to pioneer the whole thing. You know, a lot of people, it made people turn their heads. That's why I got little glimpses of back in my days in San Diego and college, like, you know, what would have that been like? But anyway, I digress. I love the point you brought up, Feisty, about how it's really semantics, right? Like right now we saw quite a few articles come out about how Android Wear in particular has moved not really a whole lot of units. It's not necessarily being adopted quite as fast as, say, a smartphone has. But when we talk about smartwatches, that might be true. But honestly, for me, I kind of live on the other side of this topic in the sense that I actually think wearables have completely exploded. Because you got to think about wearables in general. Smartwatches, yes, might be a niche product, but I look at, you know, fitness trackers and how everyone's wearing them and whether or not they're actually really beneficial for half the people who are wearing them. Well, that's a different topic, but I actually think wearables are the future. They are the next big thing. Whether or not it's going to be smart watches in general, in particular, I mean, that may be that still needs to be seen. But I think wearables are definitely becoming a very mainstream thing. You just have to look at which portions of the spectrum to look at. But as far as smartwatches go, I mean, I don't know. I thought Android Wear was a pretty nice implementation to begin with. I have gone back to my Pebble though because, well, I mean, I'm going to get into this question next. For me, it's battery life that really gets me going on Android Wear. Is that I wish I could keep my watch on for much longer periods of time. And my Pebble is the only thing that allows me to do that, especially for certain functions that I need. But before I get into asking you guys what your issues are with, let's say, smartwatches or Android Wear in particular, what smartwatches are you guys rocking anyway? I know, Lanh, you said the Moto 360?
Hold on. One sec, guys. Before we go any further, just a little quick fun fact. For those who are wondering, Android Wear moved 700,000 units in 6 months, right? That was the news story?
Yes, it was.
I did a little Google searching while you were rambling on there. And according to Peter Cho on October 25th, 2008, the HTC G1 sold about 600,000 units in its first year. So to give everybody an idea, I mean, 700,000 in the first 6 months is actually fairly decent for a brand new platform, considering that Android itself actually didn't do that good. So.
Okay, fair enough. I did notice that, you know, everyone was covering that particular article, and there was a mixture of positive reaction and negative reaction. I guess it depends on how you look at it. Some people were like, "Oh, they put out over 750,000," and then other people were like, "But it wasn't a million." You know, so I guess it matters.
Did you see the Wall Street Journal article that everyone's all pissed off about?
No, I didn't see that one.
They compared Android Wear to iPhone sales.
Wow.
As if that were something that could possibly be compared. I thought that was kind of humorous. I was like, good job, Wall Street Journal, because that's what everybody thinks of when I think Android Wear. How many iPhones were sold?
All right. Well, back to the topic at hand. Lanh was talking about the Moto 360. Like, that's the one that you're rocking, right?
Yeah, if I do wear a smartwatch, the Moto 360 is the one that I typically wear because that's the one that I actually own. So. But, you know, honestly, they're all really kind of the same. So it's like you wear one Android Wear watch, you kind of wear them all. So they're really not too different. But I mean, I kind of agree with with you, Josh, on what you said about wearables in general. They do. I mean, I do agree with the fitness, like the fitness bands. Like I do see a lot of people wearing fitness bands, so I agree in that regard that they have taken it off. But as far as just like actual smartwatches, I feel like it's still very niche because I don't see very many people wearing them like right now. I mean, that could change in the future, obviously, but as of right now, I think it's kind of just the tech nerds that want to wear it, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that one, they're like a lot of the watches are very masculine. They're not like unisex. So I think if they're like sort of like a more unisex type watch, I think the adoption rate would probably be a lot higher. And then they're not like the most fashionable watches on the market. Like even like the 360 and the G Watch R, even though they look really nice, they still don't really look as nice as something that as like a normal watch, like a Michael Kors or something like that, or a Nixon. So.
All right, how about you over there, Joe? What are you rocking on your wrist, or what is sitting on your table, just wishing it could be on your wrist?
I have the LG G Watch, and whether or not I wear it is based on what I'm doing. Like if I'm just sitting here at the desk, writing or doing videos, I'm not wearing it because my cell phone is like right there. I can just pick it up. But I actually do wear it when I go out and about doing things. Like when I get a red light when I'm driving, it's easier to look, to glance at my wrist to see who sent me a message than it is to pull my phone out of my pocket, look at it, risk missing the green light and having people honk at me and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm not wearing it. It's really only when I go out and about and in situations where taking my phone out of my pocket is a bigger inconvenience than it is to just look at my wrist to see what's going on.
Okay. And Feisty, who had a lot to say about wearables, which ones do you have, or which one are you using?
At this moment, nothing. I've had the LG G Watch. It spent a short time on my wrist, but at this moment, there are no wearables in the house.
Okay. So in the limited amount of time that you had the LG G Watch, Feisty, it really didn't convince you about this ecosystem that we're seeing hopefully growing?
The ecosystem, yes. I love the ecosystem. It's exactly what I want. And I want it embedded everywhere. I want it in the steering wheel of my car. I want it, in the sleeve of my jacket, that sort of stuff. But the wristwatch, again, it does not fit my life.
Okay, let's explore that real quick then. Let's stick with you, Feisty, right now, since I have you right now. So what is it about the wristwatch, the wristwatch form factor, the smartwatch, that doesn't convince you that it's something that you would want to have in your repertoire?
It really comes down to the functionality for me. When I'm in a position where I'm wearing the short sleeves, I'm usually just sitting in the office here, plunking away on the laptop. Again, it rubs on the desk, it rubs on the laptop, it wrecks things, wrecks the watch, and it's uncomfortable. Can't wear it. The rest of the time, I'm dressing up nice. It's going under my, shirt jacket, and it's under the cufflinks, and again, it's a piece of jewelry at that point, but it serves zero function other than aesthetics. So for me, the big thing, moving in, what's the ideal wearable in this case? Again, come down to the functionality. You mentioned battery life, and I think we're in this situation right now where there's no one watch or even fitness tracker that offers everything that somebody wants. I'd like a watch that has, theoretically a watch, I'd like a wearable that has its own data connection. It's got GPS and a heart rate sensor, do some nice sleep monitoring.
So the Samsung Gear S, maybe?
Yeah, the Gear S, yes. But I'd also like Android Wear.
Yeah. Okay.
So like you said, you opened up asking about the ecosystem. Yes, absolutely love the ecosystem. Just wristwatch, can't do it.
Yeah, it does feel like Android Wear is sort of the jumping off point to what so many other form factors could be. I mean, obviously we're looking at Android Auto. It takes a few cues from Android Wear. The ecosystem probably will move forward where the actual form factor of the wristwatch kind of doesn't. Joe, what are some of the problems that you see with the smartwatch game? Let's say, you have the G Watch. I almost said R, the LG G Watch, for example.
That's a really difficult question because I don't know exactly where these things are going, and that might be the problem, at least to me, because I don't know what the purpose of these are going to eventually become. I'm sorry, I'm trying to like think of like a better way to phrase that, and I really can't. But you know, like I said earlier, you know, with smartphones and like laptops, you know, all this other technology that's mainstream, we know what it's for and we know why it's here. But you know, like with the watch, I don't know why I have this thing on my wrist right now, or well, it's on my table right now, but I don't know why I have it. And I would really like to have a reason to own it. So I think that's its biggest weakness right now is just, you know, not enough reasons to have one.
Okay. Let's jump over to Lanh.
Yeah, I kind of have to just piggyback off what Feisty said. Like, it's that I think one of the biggest problems is that they don't function without your phone, and I think that's the reason. I think that's kind of one of the biggest drawbacks is that you can't. It doesn't. It's just a watch at that point if you don't have your phone with you, and I know like. With the update and then the Sony Smartwatch 3 having GPS, it can function somewhat without your phone. Like you can go running and then when you come back to your phone, it'll sync the data up. But you can't, you know, make phone calls. You can't answer, you know, text messages or anything without the phone. And I think that's sort of like, you know, it's not really saving you too many steps. I mean, it's not really any more difficult to just pull your phone out of your pocket and just answer that text on your phone. I mean, yeah, you can just look at it and see if if it's important and decide whether you want to answer it or not. But I don't know. I just don't really see that it's saving you all that much time to just take your phone out of your pocket, look at it, and decide whether you want to answer it or not. So I think that's one of the biggest problems.
Well, you bring up a particular point that it's you said the phrase it's just a watch at that point. And what if you looked at it from that scope? What if you looked at it as I want a new watch? Maybe I would go for this electronic watch that has a little bit more to it than a regular wristwatch that will just tick. Is it wrong to think that smartwatches could just be a fashion item like Feisty said, or that maybe the functionality will not quite evolve? Maybe it will just be a fashion statement. Is it wrong to think that could be where this goes?
I don't think that's necessarily like the wrong way to look at it, but I don't know. I just feel like if you're gonna buy a smartwatch, you kind of want to use it for the smart functionalities and not just as a watch. And if you want to use it as a watch, you want the battery life to be, you know, reasonable, not just like a couple of days if you're just going to use it as a watch. So I don't know. I guess that's my way of looking at it.
Okay. But before smartwatches became a thing, I have this questions for all you guys. Did you guys have a collection of watches, or did you have like, you know, a favorite watch that you wore before this whole smartwatch revolution sort of took off? Well, not took off, but came about.
I'll go first because my answer is quick. I have never worn a watch in my lifetime before Android Wear.
Why though? That's the part that I want to see, because maybe we're exploring. You know, maybe it's not just smartwatches or Android Wear that's the problem. Maybe what they're doing is they're trying to jump into a system that not everyone has adopted in the first place, and you might be an example. How come you never really were a watch person?
It's just, I don't know. That's a difficult question to answer. It's just something I wasn't into. You know, like, why don't you wear bracelets? Why don't you wear jewelry? You know, how come you don't wear Crocs? You know, it just wasn't my bag. You know,
Crocs.
It just wasn't something that I was ever into. And you know, I mean, I got the G Watch because I'm a tech nerd and I work for a tech blog, and you know, it was said to me at one point that it behooved me to pick one up. So. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's something I was never really into before. And it's not really something I'm into now. Like, I don't really, you know, look at this thing and like, man, my left wrist looks way more badass than my right wrist right now with this awesome thing. And it's like, frankly, it reminds me of those Casio calculator watches from like the 80s and 90s. You guys remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it reminds me of. Like, and I think it's the same kind of people who wear both kinds of watches, you know, nerds. You know, I mean, I don't see you know the cheerleader homecoming queen like rocking a Moto 360 going, oh my god, I won homecoming queen, I'm gonna totally blog this on Google Plus on my watch. Like, that's not gonna happen. Like,
if you could blog on your watch, like, we were done. Like, that's all we need. Like, honestly, like, you brought that up and I thought about it. I was like, holy shit, that would be really cool.
We would have no like videos at MWC. You would see you guys walking around behind a bunch of other people's videos, just talking to your wrist.
You never know. Maybe 5 years, we're gonna see that happen.
Oh man, that'd be great. And home automation while we're at it. I would love home automation on Android Wear.
Oh yeah, that would be really good.
Oh, man, talk to my watch, set the thermostat.
So not really much of a watch person. See, this is something that I said one time, like right when Android Wear was kind of starting to become a thing. There aren't that many people who wear watches in general. I think it's fair to say that we're kind of 50-50 split when it comes, like, at least in the West, that, you know, you can walk around and you're not going to see every single person wearing a watch. So maybe this isn't the form factor that the smartwatch revolution needs to sort of focus on. Maybe. How about you, Feisty? Were there any watches that you have? Do you have a watch collection at all? I imagine you have a very stylish profile picture here on Skype, so I feel like you have one of those wooden boxes with like a velvet thing in the middle with all these watches in it.
It's got the watch pillows inside.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna say I dressed up for that picture. No. I used to have a lot of watches. Now, that was before I took my first office job. I was out there. I was, outdoor jobs. My hands were dirty. It was during those times where a watch was invaluable. I couldn't take my phone out of my pocket. Indeed, this goes back to a time when I didn't have a phone in my pocket. It just wasn't feasible. And during that time, I mean, your hands are dirty. You can't reach in your pocket. You don't even want to touch the watch because you're covered in oil, you're covered in food, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there right now that are in this boat also. So just to be able to glance at the watch, yes, to answer your question, I had a number of them. I took the office job. I kept one very nice watch, and everything else was either given away or was worn out anyways and hit the trash can. Got recycled.
Okay, every single person who wears watches, they're either a metal band or a leather band, and I'm gonna take a bet and say that you're a leather band kind of guy.
You would lose. I'm sorry. Metal band.
Are you serious? Metal band? Really?
Metal band.
Feisty's like hemp.
That's right.
I can see Josh wearing a hemp watch or a hemp watch band before anybody else in this podcast.
Whoa. Okay, before we even get into any of that right now,
with your hardware QWERTY keyboard and your hemp wristwatch.
Gotta go back in time, right? No, I want to rock those silicone but clear silicone bands.
Oh man, those are gross. Don't they make like kids sandals made out of that stuff? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
When I was a kid, I had a watch that had a clear band, and I thought it was the coolest thing. But for me, so I guess this would allow me to answer the question too, is I do look at watches as a fashion statement. If you look at earlier videos of Android Authority that I was doing, you would notice that I had a lot of stuff on my wrists. I had a watch on my left hand, and then on my right hand, I would have a bunch of like bracelets and trinkets from people that mattered to me. You know, I used to say I only wear things that really mean something to me. So I would have like beads. I would have like this necklace from Ghana that my best friend got me, and I just wrap it around my wrist. I since then have stopped wearing that stuff. Much to the chagrin of my best friend, but our big boss Darcy was super happy about that because he said it distracted from the phone. But anyway, but in any case, I do look at them as a fashion statement. And as far as the question goes of what kind of band I would use, as long as it matches my shoes and my belt, let's put it that way. I'm in that category of fashion sense, I should say. But yeah, I do look at them as fashion statements, and whether or not they're smart or not, it doesn't matter as long as they look good. And if they happen to be smart, I want the function to add to what I need to do. But we have Lanh left. Did you have a watch collection before smartwatches became a thing?
Yeah, I was actually kind of big into watches for a little bit, but my watch collection consists mostly of like G-Shocks and stuff. But I was pretty big into G-Shocks for a while, but I'm kind of the same way as you are. Like, I just kind of wore them. I didn't really wear them to tell time. I just wore them because I liked the way that they looked. So they're just a a part of my wardrobe. I just wore them as like a fashion statement and not really anything else. But yeah, my collection is pretty small. I kind of got out of collecting watches because I don't know. I guess it was just a phase of mine, I guess. But so my collection is pretty small.
Okay. So, with this whole idea in mind, we all have differing opinions on even just the watch, the idea of the watch in general. The question I wanted to pose to everybody with that in mind, that, we've all had varying degrees of liking watches. In Joe's case, he never really did like wearing them, never really has. For Lanh and I were fashion statements, and for Jonathan the same, but then, he moved on to a different part of his life, so he didn't need it as much, I guess. Do you think that the smart device, the wearable, needs to move beyond the watch and go somewhere else? And if so, what kind of device do you think that would look like?
Have you ever seen the television show Continuum? It's a newer show. It's a little bit crazy. The main character is a cop that was sent back from the future. And, she's got basically the entire phone and everything, a full computer system right in her head. Now, this is going a little bit extreme here, but, it's built in. It's a biometric thing. She doesn't have to think about it. She doesn't have to charge it. She just, wakes up in the morning and watches a video in her head, so to speak. And maybe that's extreme, and certainly going into, physically embedding technology gets scary. However, the idea of having limitless power, for starters, and having it always available that's kind of exciting to me. I think I would pursue something like this.
Limitless power. That's an awesome phrase to use for that. How about Joe? Like, is there a wearable that you would actually wear?
That's a good question. I always wanted to try Google Glass. I think that's kind of like a fun concept. But I mean, much like Android Wear, you can't really do much with it just yet. But I always thought that the next thing was going to come from something that was directly in front of your face, because you literally cannot use any less effort to check something than when something is already there in front of your face all the time. So I mean, I always wanted something like a HUD, just like a heads-up display that I can like access and use without actually having to do anything.
So you want life to look like a video game? Is that what?
damn straight. Who wouldn't, man? That's awesome. You have all your information right there. You got like all your vital stats and your inventory. You can like have like what's in your wallet over there also. Who wouldn't want a heads-up display? I think that's really awesome. That's what I want.
Did you guys ever play Metroid Prime? Do you know that one?
I stopped at Super Metroid.
Oh, okay. Metroid Prime was like the first-person shooter version of Metroid, and when you were talking about like heads-up displays, I thought of that, because when she puts on the helmet, like the heads-up display, it was one of the first ones like to look like it actually moved with the person rather than just a static thing. But yeah. Okay, so something a little bit more closer to the face, I suppose. How about you, Lanh? Coming from somebody who was a watch enthusiast, are you happy with the watch form factor, or is there a form factor that you think the smart device needs to move into in order to become relevant?
Yeah, I have to agree with Joe. Like, I would want something, like I would want like a contact lens that like I could put into my eye and I could like see everything, like information like weather, or I could lock onto somebody and like identify them and see their weight, height, and name and all that stuff. Like lock onto somebody, I think that'd be cool. Or something that makes me feel like a heads-up display, like Iron Man or something, like just in my eye. Because I mean, if it's in my eye, I already wear contacts anyway. So if I had like a smart contact, I think that'd be pretty sweet to just be able to see information and not have to do anything. Because I mean, with a smartwatch, you still have to check it, and if it's already like in my eye, I already see it.
How would you control something like that though? That's what I'm wondering. It's just biometrically, like how, like in Continuum, like leave it to Feisty for me to say what kind of wearable do you want, and he goes implant.
I want it inside of me. I can't remember where I saw this at, but a really fun concept for controlling that kind of stuff, like something like a wrist band, not like a watch, but like a little band, and you could like tap your palm with your fingers or something, and like swipe things and move them away. I thought that was a pretty cool concept, but I wish I could remember where I saw that from. But that would be my idea of how to control it.
Well, we can't have an episode of the Friday Debate podcast without this. Grushy told me to make sure to add this in. I think he would want a wearable with a taser on it, and so I think he just needs to have a taser. I think he's good. So he's probably
it'd be like Cyclops and X-Men.
Yeah, exactly.
Press the button and it shoots things.
But it's a taser. He's got to get like super close to them in order to.
He's got to bash his head on them.
Yeah, exactly. So if Android Wear is supposedly not really on its way up so far, one thing that we're seeing, and we're definitely going to get confirmation of this in MWC. At least Lanh and I are going to. We all are really, but Lanh and I might be able to actually see these things in the flesh. HTC, obviously Apple is going to have its own wearable that is based upon their own operating system, but it also looks like these manufacturers who are in the Android cut are deciding not to go Android Wear. Now, do you guys think that that's actually a good move? Do you think that moving into a different operating system, at least for someone like HTC or LG with their WebOS wearable, is that enough to sort of change it up? Is it too little too late already? Have we proven that the wearable is not something, or the smartwatch is not something that's going to catch on, even if they change it to, say, Tizen or WebOS? What do you guys think about? What do you guys think about the operating system, the very core of a smartwatch being changed?
Anybody else want to go first? Because I don't know yet.
You mean just as far as like Android OEMs go? Like
yeah. I mean, obviously, we might get into the Apple Watch for a little bit, but obviously, being an Android podcast, it's going to be interesting seeing how some of these manufacturers are actually going away from Android, and it begs the question: is that going to be effective?
I don't think it's necessarily a bad move, because I think as long as they make the watch compatible like across a multitude of Android devices and not just their own specifically, then I don't think it's too bad of a move. Especially since Android Wear, I mean, it hasn't exactly, I wouldn't say it's exactly exploded onto the scene. So at this point in time right now, I think it's okay for them to try a different operating system and just sort of see how it goes.
Okay. I remember messing with a Tizen device with the original Samsung Gear. It was I don't know. Android Wear definitely seemed like that leap forward that smartwatches needed for sure. But it remains to be seen whether or not Tizen will grow into what Android Wear has already become. It's just interesting. Let's Joe, did you have any thoughts on it? I know I kind of blasted that onto you guys out of nowhere.
No, I needed a minute to think about it because sometimes I have like an immediate answer, but every now and again I need a couple of minutes to articulate it. The way I look at like HTC. By the way, Lanh, according to one of our talented writers, Rob Triggs, the HTC smartwatch will play nice with all phones running Android 4.4 and later, and Apple products running iOS 7 and later. So, yes, it's not going to be HTC only.
Yeah, that's a good move.
But the way I look at like HTC branching off, Samsung branching off, and even like the Pebble smartwatch to a degree, is the same way I look at OEM skins on, well, I guess not really skins, but OEM skins on Android, in that it allows the the OEMs to branch out a little bit and try some new things. And I mean, you better believe that if HTC's smartwatch has something really, really cool or really special about it, eventually a similar thing will be integrated into Android Wear. I mean, that's how Android has been growing for years now. Is either hackers or ROM modders, sorry about that, or OEM skins, or in something they push the boundaries in one direction, and then at some point Google's like, hey, you know what, that's not a bad feature, we'll incorporate that. One really good example is the drop-down notifications, or the quick settings, which started out in a Samsung OEM skin, and before that, a ROM that you could find on XDA somewhere.
Yep.
So, I think it's going to be the same kind of thing with wearables where, I think it's great that they're branching out more to try new things and to try to implement more features, because I think, ultimately competition for those features will eventually be integrated back into Android Wear, thus making the platform stronger. So really, it's a win-win for everybody. There's some extra choices out there for everyone if they want to go those routes, or they can just wait for Android Wear to evolve to kind of swallow up the competition like Android does. So I'm cool with it either way.
Okay. Feisty, we lost you there for a second, but just to bring you back into it, we were talking about whether these OEMs who, for the most part, are part of Android's camp, they're creating wearables or smartwatches that are using different operating systems. Now, obviously, their compatibility with smartphones might vary from time to time, but it looks like, at least what Joe said, HTC will play with everybody, really. But is it a good move to go away from what is this large ecosystem that you said you're actually happy to have, and create smartwatches with, say, Tizen, WebOS? I'm trying to remember a couple of the other ones. Obviously, the Apple Watch is going to be something we touch upon in a little bit. How do you feel about these OEMs going outside of the Android Wear route?
I have really, truly mixed feelings on this. I hope I don't duplicate anything Lanh had said. I think it's great that they're reaching out, doing their own thing, creating their own OS, their own ecosystem. And like Joe was saying, in the end, it's all going to come around together, and somebody's going to step up and take all of the best features of all of these OSs and really bring it together. But I think right now it's that it's that separation that's in a way holding wearables back. We're saying that wearables are for the niche. They just, not too many people can use them because they're not solid enough for mainstream, and with everybody going their own route, I keep seeing these different these separate roads, and lost my train of thought here. Let's go back to laptops again. Not laptops, sorry, just computers in general, right? For the longest time, Microsoft, they came in, they ultimately swept the market, and everybody ran Microsoft. And then computers became their own, and now they've split off. And the Ubuntu, the Linux community is growing. The Mac OS X community, it's growing. These other systems are coming around, to fill in the gaps and as niche extras. But we had one coherent. I just called Microsoft Windows coherent. Anyways, we had one coherent OS for everything, know, right? So right now, we don't have that one standard of an OS. I might like, personally, Android Wear, but is it the answer? I don't think so. I think if it was, HTC wouldn't be thinking of their own. Samsung may still be trying to push Tizen, their own way to go, but again, if there was that dominant OS that really served the people the way we needed it, there would be no room for these outcrops. Okay. No need for them at this time. Not until wearables are more mainstream.
So do you think it's a bad sign that they're sort of branching off and trying to make their own operating systems for these smartwatches? Is it a bad sign for Android Wear, I should say?
No, I don't think so. And you have our loyalists. Let's look at Android specifically. I don't see CyanogenMod taking over Android. Despite their claims. And yes, they have more users now, but CM, and even with CM12 coming out, there's a lot of people excited, but it's not going to take over. Mainstream Android is still going to exist, and I think that's going to be the same with Android Wear. No matter how much competition comes along, even with Apple, I think Android Wear will remain because it ties to the Google system. Google now specifically is very powerful. We don't know it in our day-to-day lives sometimes, but Google now kind of pulls it all together.
Okay. We have mentioned Apple a few times now, and I want to open the floor for our last, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes here on the podcast. While we will talk about our thoughts on the Apple Watch, obviously none of us have actually seen it in the flesh or even worn it. Yeah, that's months and months, maybe even a year off still. how do you guys feel about the Apple Watch? Because I've heard from a lot of people, this is exactly what we should have had in a smartwatch in the beginning, which I think is a ridiculous claim. But if it's not all it's cracked up to be, what is it that a smartwatch can have that would actually make you want to buy it? Let's start off with Lanh. Do you have one for us? What do you think? What do you think of the Apple Watch? Yeah, let's start with that.
When I first, aesthetically, I don't like the way that it looks because I prefer, just I want a watch that's round, like a normal watch would be. So aesthetically, I don't think it's that great looking, but I do think that Apple is getting a lot of things right as far as making it appeal to the masses and both male and female, because they have the small one and the larger one, and you don't really get that with Android Wear. So they've gotten that aspect right where they're appealing to either sex, and also the way that they're handling the band support and how easy it is to swap out the bands, because a lot of these other Android Wear watches, you have to use the tool and to get the little spring out. But with the Apple Watch, you can just slide out the bands, and there's going to be since it's Apple, there's going to be a ton of them to pick from. So I think they have the customization down too, which people are going to like a lot. The price is probably going to, be through the roof though. So I don't know. I think that the price they're probably going to kind of lose out on maybe, but I guess it depends really on how they're going to handle it. But I don't know. So I think they're doing some things right, and then they're doing some things that are a little bit questionable. So it's kind of hard to say right now, but since it's not physically out, but that's sort of how I feel about it right now.
Okay. I could hear some pitchforks being drawn up earlier when you were saying that they were doing some stuff right. So is that would it be safe to say that that's something, what you were mentioning about the Apple Watch, that it's highly customizable in an easy way? Would it be safe to say that that's something you would want out of your dream wearable? What would your dream wearable look like then?
As you mean, as a watch form factor?
Yeah, let's talk about smartwatch, since that's our focus.
I don't know. I think I'd want it to look like a really luxurious watch, like a Nixon or something. So I would want it to be all metal, but then I'd want to be able to easily swap out the bands and stuff, and maybe put in anything on my own. So I don't want to have to deal with those little spring, whatever they're called, but I want a watch that's highly customizable and one that actually will do things that I want it to do. I would like to, like I mentioned earlier, I want to be able to text from my watch and not have to talk into it in order to send out a message. I want to actually be able to physically type on it. But I don't know. I just want something that looks nice. Something that looks nicer than the ones we have right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just answer real quickly on the Apple Watch part. I actually think it looks ridiculous. I really do. And I am not a fan of the way it looks at all. That huge dial on the side. It's going to be just the bubbly iOS icons all over the place. It's probably going to make some ridiculous noises. And yeah, I've been hearing from certain people. I watch a lot of YouTubers, and when the Apple Watch was announced, they said, this is exactly what all these smartwatches were supposed to be. Apple's going to get it right. And I just kept looking at it I don't think they are. This doesn't look good at all to me. Obviously, functionality is something we're going to figure out later on. But let's pop over to Joe. If you had any thoughts about the Apple Watch, you can go ahead and sound them off. But also after that, what does a dream wearable look like for you? What would make you a watch guy?
Thank you for asking both questions at once, because I have almost nothing to say about the Apple Watch. The only thing I will say is that in general, the mass media, at least in the United States, I can't speak for the rest of the world because I don't know their habits. But in the United States, if somebody at Apple headquarters farts, you're going to see 90 headlines about it. So I think in terms of exposure to the mainstream, I think the Apple Watch is going to do a lot more than Android Wear has in making people aware that wearable technology exists in a consumer, format. And that's really all I can say about it because I haven't seen it. I think it's hideous also, but I actually do like the dial on the side. At least
Really?
if I can use that to control apps and stuff.
I guess so, but okay.
Only if it's functional. Like if it's just kind of like there and you can like, oh yeah, spin for screen brightness. I hate it. It sucks. But
then you would have those people who are so into the Apple Watch going, look at the screen go up and down. Like,
oh my goodness.
I remember when the iPad came out with that smart cover and it would snap onto the side. Everyone was like, hear the snap. It drove me nuts. I'm just saying.
When the Nintendo 3DS came out, I went through all that with my friends. Like, oh, look at the 3D slider, turn it on and off, and be like, oh, my head goes from hurting to not hurting. This is great. What a great game system you have there, Nintendo.
That's so true,
though. But for me, like, for me to be a 24/7 smartwatch wearer, I would want. It's all software for me at this point. I mean, like, I don't really, I don't think I'm ever going to wear a watch as a fashion statement. I just, it's never been something that I've ever done. I don't think it's something I'm going to ever do. But I will put anything, on my wrist if it helps me throughout the day. Earlier I mentioned home automation, like being able to, integrate this with Nest. My biggest beef with Android Wear is the navigation, like getting to my applications, using my applications. It takes I'm gonna do this here: 1 tap, 2 tap, 3 tap, because the first tap didn't register, and then swipe down, swipe all the way to the bottom, start, and now I'm at my apps, and now I can open an app and actually do something. I mean, that took 5-6 seconds, and that's just ridiculous for something that should be a lot faster than that. So I mean, the only thing I really want in the wearable platform is something that's easier to use, something that's less clunky and a little bit more ergonomic, and then something that also does things other than let me check my notifications or look at the weather real quick.
Okay, yeah, you're absolutely right about the navigation part, because if you were in a car right now speeding up to a red light, you'd probably be dead right now after all that.
Yeah, exactly. I'd probably be dead anyway because I had to take both my hands off the wheel to use the damn thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
It's not like I can rotate my wrist 180 degrees and then an extra 90 degrees to tap it with the same hand. Oh my goodness, how creepy would that look?
What?
Turning your the same wrist that the watch is on, like turning your hand 180 degrees to tap it with the same hand that the wrist. Ugh.
Oh my goodness. First we get implants from Feisty, and now we have quadruple or infinite jointed wrists or something. Oh my goodness.
If I saw one person do that, I'd probably enter my house and never leave again. Yeah, no, that's it. Cylons are taking over. We're done.
Cylons. You're that meme where he's in bed and he has the blanket up to his face, like, I'm not leaving.
Nope, never again.
And for our final word, let's jump over to Feisty. If you have thoughts on the Apple Watch, because we mentioned it so much, I want to make sure we at least say a couple things about it. Go for it. But also, what would a dream wearable look like for you?
Certainly. The Apple Watch. I remember seeing the first renders of it, and that OS, just those little bubbles all over the place. I could not help but laugh. I honestly laughed at it.
Thank you. That's exactly my reaction.
If they had called it Bubble Wrap OS, and if the bubbles popped when you tapped them, we would not be having this conversation right now. It would be the greatest thing of all time.
Did you guys play that game back in the day, the Bubble Wrap game on Android?
Oh yeah.
Oh man,
saw it. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead, Feisty.
For all the hate we give to this watch, it's going to sell. Just in my opinion, the nature of the Apple, just the fans that are out there, this device is going to sell. Yeah. It's going to take credit for bringing watches into the mainstream. I hate that, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I do agree it will sell, but I don't think it's going to be on the scale of how the iPhone exploded when it came out in 2007. I don't think it's going to be on that type of scale, but I do believe it will sell.
Absolutely. So going to my ideal wearable, exactly what the other guys said here. It needs to serve all of the purposes. So instead of being a notification tool, it needs to be a full OS. It needs to be your smartwatch, so to speak, on your wrist. But for me, it needs to operate via voice and by touch with the same skill set. the same abilities. And then as well, it needs to give audio feedback as well as a visual feedback that's easy to work with without obstructing the rest of your daily life. Obviously that's the definition of the perfect wearable. I guess what I'm saying is, for me, the wristwatch certainly can't do it. Can't do it alone. It would be a part of, if I had again, I guess what I'm saying is smartwatch on the arm, the Moto Hint kind of thing, earbud in the ear, and then a Google Glass on the face. Yes, Google Glass does some audio, but
Glass
I want a little bit more than that. But I don't like. I think if I wanted Google Glass, I'd have it by now. It's too obstructive. It doesn't give enough visual feedback, for its form factor. There's too much restriction on it as well. I mean, I don't want to be held by the FBI. I know, limited case here, but held by the FBI because I wore my glasses to the movie theater.
Yeah, and that's a whole different topic, is the whole idea of creating this new culture that has to meld in with the mainstream. I get when you were talking about the hint and then putting the smartwatch on and then the Google Glass in the face. I get this image, if you remember the old Batman movies, I just imagine Feisty putting on all of the things one by one.
Yes. My smartwatch is a Project Aura watch. I can swap it out and put Grushy's taser on it, and my I/O output so I can attach to the stereo. Which brings up a great point. All of my wearables, my ideal solution is completely wireless. I can't afford to have wires all over the place. And then, of course, power becomes an issue, but yeah, always has been.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, if I had to put out my ideas on what a dream wearable would be, you guys, Feisty in particular reached for the stars there. I didn't even think about all of that. I was just thinking of what we have right now, what kind of style I would want. I would want the best of both worlds. I still want the chronograph in terms of I want the real ticking, turning gears. But then if you have the watch face behind the arms that are doing the hour and the minute and the second, if you were to hit a button to look at the actual interface of the OS, those hands would go translucent and it would just become a screen. That's what I thought, at least. Have
you seen the Kairos smartwatch?
I have. Not quite where I was thinking, but it is somewhere in that vicinity. The Martian smartwatch also had a little bit of that, but it's just got that tiny LED screen on the bottom. But yeah, I mean, that was the one that I thought of. But the last one that I was thinking of was I said this, I remember back at IFA, I want a slap band. I want a slap band watch that has a screen on it.
I was waiting for it. I've been waiting for this whole podcast for you to say something. I want this extremely hipster thing. Every episode like clockwork, man.
I know, for real. I always got to end it on that. Like, the slap band would be amazing. And then you would just, like, there would be like a tall screen on it, and it would turn on. You would just put it right onto your wrist. I think that'd be amazing. It was easy, and it blends in because it's not like, trying too hard to be a certain way. Okay, fine. I'm not gonna get too much farther into this, lest Joe makes fun of me. All right. Well, we have talked about wearables today on the Friday Debate podcast. Whether the smartwatch in particular, the wearables might encompass a whole plethora of devices. We're talking about smartwatches in general. They haven't really taken off, even though in 2014 we were all promised that it was going to be a huge, huge mainstream deal. It kind of isn't, and we explored why that might be. And we also got a glimpse into Joe not being much of a watch person and how much John and Lanh were back in the day. So thank you so much for listening and watching on YouTube. If you happen to be the Friday Debate podcast, remember that you can follow all of us, all four of us, me, Joe, John, and Lanh, on social media. The best places to find us are, of course, on Google plus our names, and you can easily search for us there. But you can also follow us on Twitter and on other social media as well. If you want the links to all of those, make sure you head on over to the androidauthority.com post for the Friday Debate podcast. podcast, talking about Android topics every week. I just said that wrong, didn't I? I'll just say it better later. Anyway, you can find the Android Authority Friday Debate podcast on all of the different channels. Like I said at the top of our show, you can find us on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Pocket Cast. And actually, I wanted to tell all of you guys, I was perusing through the Pocket Cast website. I use Pocket Cast for all my podcasts, and we were number 40 on the top 100 trending podcasts for last week.
Woo!
Oh, wow. Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Go us.
So to all of you podcast faithful on Pocket Cast, thank you so much for giving us some of that exposure. And make sure you keep listening to the Friday Debate podcast. Keep hitting that play button. And if you can rate and review our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, that also ups our visibility. So please do that as well. As always, thank you guys very much for listening and watching. Don't forget to head on over to AndroidAuthority.com for some of the best Android coverage there is on the internet. Head on over to our YouTube channel for one of the most watched Android channels on YouTube, 1 million plus subscribers at this point. So if you are not one of our subscribers, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And now I will go ahead and, as I struggle to not sniffle through this outro, I will invite all of our guests to join me on this, the Android Authority Friday Debate podcast, discussing topics in Android every week. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that we are your source for all things Android. That wasn't so bad this time around. Yeah, that
worked.
All right, thank you guys very much. And Lanh, thanks for being on the show. I'll see you at MWC, dude.
Yep, for sure, man.
All right, take care, everybody.
Yep, take care.